I'm Lucy.
And I'm Jennifer.
You're listening to Everything I Know About.
Each week, we share everything we know about a new topic, equipped with some internet research and a little too much exposure to pop culture. Hi, everyone. We are at you today with a topic that I never thought we would do on the pod, and it's dolls. But don't leave us just yet. I promise it'll be an interesting angle on dolls. So, me being an insomniac and just scrolling through my FYP at 2 in the morning every night, I've been stumbling upon a ton of doll collector content and doll collector communities, which is strange because I myself am not much of a doll collector or a toy collector. I don't know why I said not much because truthfully, I've never collected a doll in my life, but I was fascinated by these communities. Lucy, are you a collector of anything?
I do not collect anything either, so we are truly outsiders here. But you've owned dolls, right?
Yeah, of course. I had American Girl dolls. Did you have American Girl dolls?
No.
You didn't have an American Girl doll.
No, girl, those dolls were expensive.
They were expensive. I felt very special when I got my first one. I used to live in Chicago growing up, and Chicago on Michigan Avenue had this big, beautiful American Girl doll store. And when my parents would take me downtown, I would always walk past it and be like, I really want one. And then I finally got one for Christmas one year. It was a special moment.
Aw.
I had Samantha because she had brown hair, just like me.
Yeah, there was no Asian doll, so not really sure what I would have gotten.
I wonder if there is now.
There definitely is now, yeah. I mean, I did research on the American Girl dolls.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it was actually so fascinating and way meatier than I would have expected.
That is exactly how I felt about my community. So I did research on the reborn doll community, which is one that I stumbled upon on TikTok. I saw this video of this woman feeding a doll, but I thought it was a baby at first. It looked so real. I was tuning in because the doll's name was Jennifer. So she was like, this is Jennifer. She's my favorite doll. And I was like, wait, that's a doll? That looks like a baby. And she was role playing with it. All of the comments it had gone viral on the wrong side. I'm sure she was like used to seeing only comments from her own community. And everyone was like, wait, what is that? I'm so confused by this. And I looked into it and it's this reborn doll that's made of silicone. And when I tell you this thing looks real, it's honestly uncanny. It's very, very strange.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down a little rabbit hole and was just blown away by how popular these things were. All these people role playing with their dolls, like adult women.
Wait, I'm dying to know, how was she feeding the doll? Like, the doll's mouth opens?
The Jennifer doll did not have a feeding mechanism. She was pretending. But there are reborn dolls that you can give them formula and then you can like purge them later and you can like burp them and stuff. They're very interactive.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a whole big wide rabbit hole. So that leads us to today's topic, which is dolls and doll communities that are way more interesting than they sound on the surface.
I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Of course, when I do my first Google search of reborn dolls, I was shocked to find not reborn dolls for sale, but reborn dolls for adoption. So even sellers are playing into the fantasy that these are real babies. And I highly encourage everyone to just do a quick Google search. And for those watching, we'll pop in a little image here, but they are so unbelievably real looking. Some of them are made out of clay and they're all handmade and hand painted by these reborn doll artists. The clay ones go from $500 to $2,000. And then there are silicone ones that go up to $20,000.
Oh my gosh.
It is such an expensive hobby. These collectors don't have just one doll either. They'll have 5, 20, sometimes up to 100 dolls. So just imagine the cost. It's unbelievable.
Who is making these dolls? You said they're artists, so there's not like a company that makes them.
No, it's all super community driven. It's mostly hobbyists, but it's artists really that hand paint them, they hand stuff them, they make them weighted. So they are actually the weight and size of a true infant. And there's so much detail that goes into it. So yes, they're all like handmade and then people find each other on eBay and through YouTube. It's a very, very tight-knit community.
Okay. So you're paying for an art piece. Like
You
that's
are.
part of the reason it's so expensive.
Yeah, and that's one of the justifications for the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
So while some people simply display their dolls like art, there's a whole other community, and that's really what we're going to talk about today, that parent their dolls. They're changing their diapers, they're feeding them, they're putting them in the car seat and taking them to Target. And this reborn baby community has over 3 billion views on TikTok. They have tens of thousands of reborn artists. These are indie artists. And there's YouTubers with millions of views. There's one YouTuber, Reborn Baby Routine Get Ready With Me YouTuber, who has 650,000 subscribers.
Wow, she's getting her baby ready for the day. Get ready with me.
Yeah, 650,000 subscribers, and it's just a channel with her role playing with her doll. So I was blown away by how big this community was because I thought it was just gonna be like, "Oh, maybe a few tens of thousands of people." No, this is millions of people. So, obviously, the next question becomes why are people so into this? What are the reasons behind this? And the original reason these reborn babies exist is for therapeutic benefits. So, this
Mhm.
part gets a little bit heavy and a little bit sad, but we'll transition into the more fun stuff afterwards. But on a more somber note, these dolls originally existed for grieving mothers. It was for parents who had experienced infant loss or women with infertility. And interestingly enough, they were also used with people with chronic illnesses and dementia, and it was
Hmm.
proven to be a therapeutic method for them as well. So in 2020 and 2022, there were quite a few research papers that came out evangelizing the therapeutic benefits for both chronic illnesses and bereavement causes. So there's one woman in particular who brings 30 reborn babies to her Alzheimer's clinic. And she says that these people who can't even tell you what they had for breakfast that morning are telling you about their baby that they had 60 years ago. And it just brings
Oh.
life into their eyes, and they treat these babies like real human infants. And it alleviates anxiety. Dementia patients who can become quite aggressive and lose their temperament, they become very subdued and relaxed. So it is an excellent therapeutic mechanism for them.
Wow, I wonder how that was even discovered as a therapeutic method.
It was discovered because this paper came out that said it really helps with chronic anxiety and bipolar disorder.
Hmm.
This practitioner at the clinic decided she would try it with her dementia patients, and it ended up working
Mm.
really well. So, for those with bereavement and infant loss, it brings comfort to hold the weight of the baby. And actually, it alleviates significant symptoms of anxiety, grief, and insomnia. There's two ways that it does this, one through role playing, so treating the dolls like real babies. It provides that emotional support and helps sleeping challenges due to anxiety because these women will actually sleep with their bereavement dolls. You can heat them up too. That's another interesting fact. So they heat them up to like a true human body temperature and sleep with them. And
Yeah.
then they also do play therapy with them. And this provides like a comforting, safe, nurturing environment for them to process their grief and their loss.
That seems like such an effective tool for those mothers. But obviously, with those viewership numbers you were quoting at the beginning of the episode, it has probably spread beyond that community. Like, why has it become popular outside of this use case?
Totally. I mean, it definitely has. There is a large subset of the community that are grieving mothers that find community through this, but there's also another subset of people who it's truly just their passion and their hobby. There is one quote that I found in Cosmo, actually. They interviewed a bunch of people in this community, and one person said, "Our generation alone, we've had 9/11, COVID, the Great Recession, and this melts away stress. It's almost like going back to a more innocent time and allows us to community build with others. Almost everybody I've met in the reborn hobby community were all outcasts." So that's really
Oh.
sad, but kind of sweet that they find each other
Are the people in the community who are not grieving mothers themselves, are they young women or they're older women?
all over the place. So the woman from this quote was actually 28 years old and she's not planning on having children. And she gets a lot of hate comments being like, "Why don't you just get a real baby? Like, you
Yeah.
obviously just want a real baby. Why are you doing this?" And she says that her hunch is that angry mothers are just really upset that their lives are consumed by 24/7 childcare and that they wish they would have waited a little longer to have
Oh,
kids.
like, people who regret having kids are the
Yeah.
ones leaving these hate comments.
Yeah. So she says, "I wonder if for some of them it's jealousy, like maybe they had a baby when they weren't ready and they're missing their freedom because I can shove the dolls in a closet whenever I wanna go to the movies." So the reason that Cosmo even did this article is because the reborn doll community went viral in 2022 on TikTok because people were feeding their reborn dolls baby formula during the baby formula shortage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a huge drama, obviously, because this is going viral. It's like reaching outside of the reborn community. And people are commenting, like, "This is absurd. I can't even get this brand of formula for my human child. Why does your doll child need it?" And the reborn community is coming to each other's defenses. They're like, "We know that they're not real dolls, but this is our hobby and it's completely valid. And I can spend my money however I want to. I can spend my money on formula for my doll." They buy them diapers and actually change the diapers every day.
Wow, talk about the waste that's created with that too.
Lots of waste, yeah. They use wipes on them, many people even have entire rooms dedicated to them. Like it's their nursery with a rocking chair, a crib, and they film this content and it's the role play content. One woman says, "My husband can play with cars, he can play video games, he can play Legos." And everyone's like, "That's so cool." But the moment I'm like, "I play with dolls, I'm a weirdo who needs to have a real baby."
I mean, I definitely understand where she's coming from with, like, why are you judging other people's hobbies? But it just seemed like I mean, specifically with this shortage of baby formula that was widely publicized in the news, when actual human babies who obviously need formula to survive cannot get it, like, that does seem like you're infringing upon other people at that point. Obviously, you can do whatever you want with your own time, but your actions are negatively impacting others at that point.
Yeah, of course. I feel the exact same way. I did not think that was okay for them to be doing. There are some other women in the reborn community who buy one thing of baby formula for the entire lifespan of their reborn baby, and then they just fill the formula container back up with flour or cornstarch or something. I'm like, "Okay, that's fine."
Yeah,
But
you can totally mimic that formula consistency.
yeah, and actually when I was doing research for this, I was getting ads for reborn formula.
Of course, there would be companies making accessories for this now.
Of course, of course. But oftentimes these women feel completely ostracized by their friends and families for their hobby, and so that's why they go so online, and, like, that community is so vibrant online. Another piece of drama that came out in 2022 was a woman who filmed herself breastfeeding her reborn doll, and it completely split the
I
community.
knew we were gonna get there. I knew we were.
You were
Mhm.
waiting for it.
Uh-huh, yeah, why do you think I asked that question at the beginning, how she was feeding her baby?
Oh, I thought you meant, like, the mechanics, not
Well, I was curious, like, yeah, the mouth, but yeah.
the breastfeeding thing completely split the community because there was one half of it that was like, they already think we're crazy. They already think this
Yeah,
hobby is insane. And I'm like ostracized by everybody. And now you're breastfeeding the child. Seriously? And then the other half are like, no, this is standing up to power and women's bodies aren't sexualized. And this is me showing that it's okay to breastfeed and like do this in public and it shouldn't be sexualized and yada yada. I kind of stand with the this is showing a little bit of deviant behavior with the dolls side of things, to be honest. But you know what? You do you.
well, like, okay, I'm starting to understand why somebody might want one of these dolls, but you said people are they're collecting them and spending, like, tens of thousands of dollars to build a whole collection, like, if the whole idea is that it's real, it's so real to you that you're feeding it, you're burping it, you're changing its diaper, why do you need, like, 10 dolls?
That is a great question. So this is completely anecdotal, but just as I was browsing the hashtags and like looking at some of the social media for it, it seems like women have one doll that is their favorite. And then I actually saw multiple people have a different doll for each day of the week.
What?
Yeah.
You're starting to lose me. I totally get the grieving mothers use case. I totally get the Alzheimer's dementia use case. Even women who aren't dealing with those types of traumas or conditions, I get why maybe you want one and you start to like develop attachment and feeling towards it. But okay, if you're switching out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're starting to lose me.
I know, I know. I really tried to get into the psychology of it because I don't quite understand either. Like, it seems extremely paradoxical because, I mean, they're feeding them, they're putting diapers on them, they're rocking them to sleep, and then literally the quote said just putting them in the closet until, like, what, next week, Wednesday?
Right.
So I really I'm having a hard time understanding too. I'm trying to, like, liken it to when a kid has like, you have your favorite stuffed animal, but then you have your bed full of other stuffed animals, and they're all important to you.
I'm like thinking of so many things because I feel like baby dolls are usually sold to young children because I mean, part of the messaging is you're practicing being a mother.
Mhm.
Maybe that's subconscious, but that's definitely like part of the appeal of a baby doll is like the child who looks up to their mother can mimic the mother's activity and like mother this baby. So it's interesting to me that adult women are performing these same behaviors as young children. And I totally understand the psychology of like a young child wanting to mimic, but as like an adult woman, is it the same psychology that's driving you to do those things? Is it like a sense of nostalgia for your childhood?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because that was actually one thing that was brought up a few times is that it's healing for people's own childhood trauma, people with, like, mommy issues, to be able to
Hmm,
reparent and process their own trauma and grief.
fascinating.
My 2 cents on it is that this is a case of people feeling lost and lonely and then finding a really intense niche community that you kind of feel like you know everybody in and you're all on the same wavelength. And like we talk about so many times on the pod, people just want to feel a part of something and find their community. And this is the way that people do it.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you look at the doll landscape because on the one hand, you have baby dolls where the idea is for young children to learn how to mother. And then you've got Barbie dolls, which are meant to be a portrayal of a grown woman and like sexualized. And then you've got what I researched, which is American Girl dolls, which is supposed to be the embodiment of girlhood. And actually, the founder of American Girl, she saw this same dichotomy in the doll landscape, and that was partly why she wanted to create these. She didn't feel like there were dolls out there that looked like young girls.
That is so true. I've never thought about that, but they
Mhm.
are one of the only dolls that feels like a companion.
Yeah. You owned one, Samantha, right? With the brown
I
hair.
had
Oh,
3.
you had 3.
I
Oh,
had 3.
look at you, girl.
It took me a while to get 3. I had Samantha and Kit. Samantha was the Victorian one, and
Uh-huh.
I had her because I was obsessed with Titanic. It was my favorite movie since I was 3 years old. Questionable parenting decision to let me watch that at 3, but Kit was Great Depression, and I weirdly was fascinated with the Great Depression too as a child.
Hmm.
I don't know, I'm
Mhm.
convinced I'm reincarnated. And
And
then
your first life was then? That was a tough
probably,
time. So, I mean, hopefully you lived a good life then, and this is the good karma that you were born now.
hopefully, yeah. And my 3rd one was a surfer girl, but she was like a limited edition. I think her name was Kaylee or something. I don't remember.
Okay. It's funny that you had so many because I read so many articles about this. Like, it truly was a wormhole, and one of the articles was like, you either were the collector or you knew that girl who had a lot of American Girl dolls. And I was like, yeah, I was for sure not a collector of dolls. But yes, lots of girls. I mean, I think all millennials, when I was like 9, everybody had an American Girl doll and like would talk about it.
Yeah. I feel like it was like the early phase of the BuzzFeed personality test when we were kids. Like, what American Girl doll do you have? It said something about you. Which one you chose?
Yeah, yeah. So, for our international listeners who might not know or can't picture what an American Girl doll is, you can close your eyes and I'll describe it. Basically, like each American Girl doll, one, it's a big doll. It's like 18 inches.
I like how you're like for our international listeners and then go to inches.
I don't even know how to translate that to metric.
I don't either.
It's a big doll.
Yeah, it's not like life size. It's not huge. It's just like not a
No,
Barbie doll.
not a Barbie doll.
It's
Yeah,
like a baby doll size,
yeah.
but a little
But
girl.
like standing. She has an outfit. Each American Girl doll is based on a different point in American history. And they come with their own corresponding books that tell the story of their life from her perspective as a 9-year-old living through whatever historical period she's based on. American Girl doll was invented in the 1980s by Pleasant Rowland.
Hmm,
She was a former grade school teacher and news anchor in her mid 40s, and she had the idea when she was visiting colonial Williamsburg.
interesting.
She was already like a successful author of textbooks and other educational materials for kids, and she wanted to create, quote, chocolate cake with vitamins. So, a doll that was fun to play with and you can still dress up just like a Barbie and is glamorous, but it also teaches you about American history. So, she created the first 3 original dolls, and they were all white. They finally, a decade after American Girl dolls were created, released the first Black American Girl doll, and it took another 2 decades for them to release a second Black American Girl doll. So, it is crazy that even in the early 2000s, it was mostly white American Girl dolls that you could find and buy.
I was about to ask you because, like, I remember the first Black one being a runaway slave, right? Like, that was her
Yes,
backstory.
Addie, yes.
Addie, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of discourse about Addie. Some people love her and see her as an example of not shying away from the hard truths of our history, while others see it as problematic that white girls had so many options of dolls they could pick and lives they could see themselves living. The only option for Black girls for so long was to see themselves in the context of slavery. I came across this quote by Britt Bennett in her 2015 Paris Review essay on this that I thought was very apt. If a doll exists on the border between person and thing, what does it mean to own a doll that represents an enslaved child who once existed on that same border? I can only imagine how tricky that would be to navigate as the parent of that child. And in response to a lot of this criticism around diversity, the company does look really different today, although I think it took far too long. Today, there's a lot more diversity to the dolls. You can actually custom make your own doll to look exactly like you and fill out personality traits for the dolls and everything.
Wow.
But I feel like just describing the dolls like does not encompass the true like cultural force that American Girl doll was as we were growing up. It was so much more than the dolls. It was like this whole universe. So just to give you an idea, like if your doll needed a repair, you would send it to the doll hospital and it would actually get sent back to you with like hospital discharge papers. The whole point of the doll was to make it feel like truly you. It looked like you. If you took on new hobbies, like you started violin lessons, you could buy a violin for your doll. And of course, that would be an accessory that would cost money. Like they had so many things. Like if you played sports, you could get soccer cleats for your doll. And when you would go to the stores, you could have these experiences. Like you could take your doll to a doll slumber party or a dinner party to celebrate your doll's birthday. Everybody treated them as if they were kind of real. You were definitely play acting as if it was a version of yourself. Not only was there the dolls, but as I mentioned, there was like the books and the educational material. And then there was also American Girl magazine, which started getting published in 1992. And these were stories specifically written for girls aged 8 to 14. That's pretty cool. Like, I don't have a kid, so maybe there's like a ton of stuff made for like young girls nowadays and I'm not aware of it. But yeah, I think it's cool to have like actual stories written for children.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember how exciting it was to get mail before like tech?
Yeah.
So, like, you could get an American Girl doll magazine, like, addressed to your name and would come to your house, and, like, all of the content would be for you. Like, how wholesome compared to, like, when I started reading 17 or Cosmo even when I was in high school.
Yeah. Did you stumble upon what was it, like the manual about you, like the care and keeping of you?
This name sounds familiar, but I didn't look into what that actually was. I heard it was controversial, though. Like, that's the mention of it that I got.
Oh, it totally is because it showed very anatomically correct vaginas and breasts at different stages of puberty. And it's like teaching you all about menstruation. And it's kind of like a running joke now. Be like, oh, I had my sexual awakening looking at the care of you.
That seems like a good thing, like, that kids are talking about that, right? Why is it so controversial?
It felt scandalous. Like, I remember, like,
Oh,
having it at my friends' houses. Like, I never had a copy of it, but, like, I had friends that did, and we would go from like, "Oh my gosh, look." Like, you have never seen a vagina before, right? And
yeah.
it would show you different ones, like innies and outies and stuff, and you're like, "Oh."
Yeah. Okay, alright. Okay, I
Yeah, it's
guess, like,
pretty graphic.
educational material that, like, that age of girl was not ready for yet.
Totally. Yeah, no, I, like, distinctly remember it showing you the different stages of how your breasts would grow in, and they were, like, pointy and upturned at one point, and I was like, "That's gonna happen? They look like ski slopes. What the fuck?"
You were traumatized.
Yeah. Canon event.
I mean, clearly the company American Girl saw themselves as far more than a doll company, right? Like, if they're making a book like that and sending that to you, they're definitely seeing themselves as, like, an educator of young women at that point.
Mhm.
I really tried to understand, like, why this company's been so successful, like, what really resonated, and I think it comes down to 3 things. So, 1, uniqueness. The hyper specificity and character building around the girl dolls really made them stand out. Not only were they attached to a certain historical period, a certain historical look, but the actual books really gave them a personality. They talked about their weaknesses, their flaws. They talked about them being mean to their family members and how they had to learn lessons. And I think for, the target audience, which was both the young girls but also the parents shelling out the money to buy it, it felt like a good investment. Second, quality. Like, I was reading all these articles and a lot of parents were talking about how this can be like passed down for generations. Like, I'm going to buy this for my daughter and then my daughter will give it to her daughter and like on and on. And they almost started to see it as like an heirloom. A lot of the accessories, like, I guess you could buy a classroom set for your doll and it was made out of like real wood and real metal. Which to me, I was like, that's shocking. Like, I feel like when I picture toys for kids, I'm like picturing plastic. Like, I'm picturing the Barbie doll with the head cut off,
Yeah.
the hair pulled out and dyed, and people like really took care of their American Girl dolls. And then the third point is price. I was surprised to find that actually Mattel owns American Girl doll now.
Really?
Yeah, they actually bought them in the 1990s.
Does Mattel own everything?
I mean, clearly they own Barbie, obviously.
Yeah.
It's interesting because obviously there's such different products at totally different price points too, right? Like a Barbie, I think when we were growing up, like a Barbie was like $50 and buying an American Girl doll was like $150. So it was at this premium price point. And like they obviously made an intentional decision to price it that highly. And I found this really interesting analysis of why this worked when you made a premium product, but marketed to the middle class. Quote, American Girl dolls appealed to the middle and upper middle class parents of the 80s and 90s who responded to national narratives of progress and prosperity by piling on extracurriculars and gearing play towards replication of the family's class position. This was childhood essentially as preparation for the college essay,
Hmm.
which is so interesting.
Wow.
And I feel like that gets us into some of the psychology about why it's stayed so relevant and is so popular today. Because since like 2020, American Girl dolls have had a huge resurgence amongst adults. And I was curious like how American Girl dolls have stayed relevant, whereas like adult women are certainly not playing with Barbies. Like that's the whole premise of the Barbie movie is like adults don't play with Barbies anymore and it's sad. And so I looked into this and it's really interesting because it seems like a lot of the popularity of the American Girl dolls is driven by progressive people on social media. So there's like a lot of meme accounts of the dolls, and these accounts will post reactions to modern day events. Like when the Supreme Court took down Roe v. Wade, there was like how the American Girl dolls would react to that. And like some of them were like, for example, the historical girl before the Supreme Court existed, her reaction was just like, what's that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
But then you also had like, Julie, which I guess is a doll from the 1970s. She had more access to abortion than like women do now. And quote, the dolls became this rallying cry, both for the nostalgia of our childhoods and as a protest against the series of unfortunate historical events we've been living through.
Hmm.
So, a lot of these American Girl adult fans, they hold very progressive views. They also credit their current value system and strong opinions to being raised with the brand and being raised as owners of American Girl dolls.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so that's part of their identity.
It's part of their identity. It's so interesting because to me as an outsider, I'm like, this doesn't seem diverse at all. Like, this doesn't seem progressive at all. Like, these stories feel like stereotypes are very one note. But these women who are big fans of the brand now, like they self-identify as progressive millennials. Their analysis of the stories of the girls were like these were girls who were fighting against injustice in their time. And like a lot of the stories talk about them taking on more progressive causes within their families or within their context.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I feel like the girls were in historical time periods, so it
Mhm.
was a lot of women's rights, and the girls, like, either couldn't go to school or they weren't taken seriously, but you could see
Mhm.
how intelligent they were in the stories and that they're, like, kind of fighting back against those stereotypes, and I just remember that, like, very vividly with Samantha in the Victorian times, and then even with Kit during the Great Depression, her family had money during the Great Depression, so
Mm.
she would do a lot of stuff for, like, community outreach and, like, do soup kitchen things for
Wow.
and, like,
Yeah. She's a good person.
she was a
Yeah.
good person during the Great Depression, so
That was you, apparently,
oh
in your reincarnation myth.
my god, that's why I'm sitting pretty with American Girl dolls now.
There's actually a "We Need an American Girl doll" meme. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay, so, like, in a lot of protests following the overturning of Roe v. Wade, there was a lot of posters that said, like, "We need an American Girl doll who dissents," or, like, "American Girl, wish I wasn't." And these memes are popularized by these accounts with hilarious names. Like, you mentioned Kit, right? Kit Kitteridge, I think is her name. The
Yeah.
account for her is Clitteridge.
Shut up. No, it's not.
So these are like, women who are reinventing the girl dolls for a modern context, right? And to like make it more relevant to women today, which is that they do hold progressive values. There was even this anecdote in one of the articles I was reading about how American Girl Doll, the company, made a post about one of its dolls during Pride. And some people interpreted that as like, oh, the doll is queer. And
Oh.
they totally celebrated that. But then the company was like, no, 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 that's not what we meant. And they like tried to backtrack and all this stuff. But then the community was like, no, we want to believe that she's queer. And they were celebrating them. So,
I wonder who it was.
I mean, all of these names totally went over my head, but it's like gossip to you.
I bet it was Molly.
I think it was. I think it was.
Molly's giving me vibes.
Okay. But outside of the memes, there's also podcasts analyzing the girl dolls. People in their 30s are gathering at American Girl cafes. YouTubers are replicating period outfits from American Girl dolls and dressing up as them. As the New Yorker says, American Girl appears to have adhered in some essential way within the millennial conception of self.
Yeah, for sure. I would totally go back into an American Girl doll store. I feel like it'd be so cute and nostalgic. I wouldn't buy one.
Well, they're probably like $300 now with
Oh, I can't even
inflation.
imagine. Cannot even imagine.
Out of our price range still.
Yeah. I just had a flashback moment when you were talking about them getting sent to the hospital and, like,
Mhm.
coming back with discharge papers and stuff. I remember you could get them cleaned up too, and they would send them back with spa stuff. Like, they would have, like, a towel wrapped around their head and, like, little cucumber slices on their eyes.
Wow.
I never did that, but I'm having, like, a visceral memory of seeing these, like,
Yeah.
cucumber patches on these dolls' eyes. And I think I, like, asked my parents if I could do it, and they're like, "That is absolutely ridiculous." No. Good choice.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of these companies use similar tactics. Like, although I didn't have an American Girl doll, I did have Build-A-Bear. I had like
Yeah.
2 or 3 Build-A-Bears, and when you created it, you put the little heart inside the bear and you stuffed it yourself, and it made it feel like it's yours. So it really
Yeah.
like companies are so good at manipulating us, you know?
They
With
really
like,
are.
"You're so special, you're so unique. We're selling you a product."
You know, I've seen a bunch of TikToks of people going on dates to Build-A-Bear that are our
Really?
age.
As
So that
adults? That's
yes,
cute.
it is cute, but it's just reminding me of, like, are millennials, like, single-handedly keeping these toy companies alive
Yeah,
just because of,
maybe.
like, pure nostalgia?
Our inner child.
Our wounded inner children.
Which brings me to my next point. So, this was not originally part of our agenda, but as I was going down this whole rabbit hole with American Girl dolls, it made me think of Jellycat. Do you know what Jellycat is?
I don't know.
Okay. So, this has been blowing up on social media. I'm on this side of TikTok, I guess. But Jellycat are these stuffed plushies, and they're not just animals. Like, that's what makes them unique. They're whimsical fruits and vegetables and plants, and they're supposed to be like really, really soft. And they're really expensive. It's like $60 for one of these plushies. And they're all over my social media, like adults buying plushies for themselves and owning like 12, 15 of these plushies, and like even on social media doing like Secret Santa, but only with jelly cats.
Hmm,
And like everybody buying each other plushies.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So I was trying to figure out like why this is blown up, why this is so popular. And Jellycat is a London-based company. They've been producing plushies for over 2 decades, and their stuffed bunny was the go-to gift for newborns, especially in the UK.
Hmm.
So that makes sense. Like, okay, I would expect that, right? Then in 2018, they launched this line called Amusables, and that's the one that adults are obsessed with. This is the one with like untraditional shapes, like potted plants and coffee cups. And I even saw one on their website, like a bowl of oats.
What?
And the oats bowl just has some blueberries on its head and it has a little smile.
I mean, it sounds cute, but what
It
the
is
fuck?
cute. But would you buy that for $60 as an
No.
adult? And the Wall Street Journal even wrote an article about this, like profiling the obsession. And this girl, she made a TikTok about buying her first Jellycat, which was a $23 smiling coffee cup. And then her video got more than 1.5 million views.
Oh my god.
And now she has 13 of these Jellycats. The resale market for these is huge because they retire certain characters. Like the coffee cup that that girl bought can be found on eBay for $70. It's an interesting parallel to the company strategies of American Girl Doll. And if I were going to start a toy company, I feel like there's a playbook here. You want to go for the premium where people like see it as good quality and nice for themselves, but also is potentially like a collector item that can like double in value.
Well, this is sad. This is literally capitalism at play. It's these toy companies being like, well, 5-year-olds don't have money, but 35-year-olds do.
Right.
So we're going to make an oat bowl plushie.
The millennial woman who's been making overnight oats like during the pandemic, like
Yeah.
targeted at her.
The overworked child who spent her life getting straight A's and is now an accountant at KPMG and eats overnight oats because she doesn't have time to cook dinner. We'll make her plushie
Yeah.
for her,
Yeah,
but not the
totally.
5-year-old.
Totally. Okay, so then obviously because I was looking to Jellycat, I thought about Beanie Babies, which were huge when we were growing up. And
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
collect Beanie Babies. I don't know if you did.
I didn't, but I had an ex-boyfriend. I was in my mid-20s, okay, so I was not even in high school. He was a shit boyfriend, but he just randomly gave me a bunch of Beanie Babies all the time.
What?
He wouldn't take me to dinner, he wouldn't, like, get me real gifts, but he would just randomly get me fucking Beanie Babies. And I don't like Beanie Ba like, this is not something that I
That's
like, it was
weird.
totally not personal at all, but he'd be like, "I got you the koala because you hug tight." I'm like, "What the fuck? What
Do
the
you
fuck?"
still have them?
No, I threw them away as soon as we broke up, but I was like, "What am I supposed to do with these? Do I put them on my bed? Do I have to display them? What do
That
I
is
do
so
with
funny.
these?"
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much my cursory understanding of Beanie Babies too, which is just that they're like kind of cute, but like whatever. I know they were huge when we were growing up. And I was surprised to find that like the story for Beanie Babies, the rise and fall of them is actually really interesting. And it's like really sinister too.
Oh.
So this will be like our little spice after talking about dolls for 40 minutes. Okay, so Beanie Babies, they were a huge fad in the 90s and they became a really popular alternative asset. This article was comparing to crypto because the toy was $5, but in mint condition with the original tag, you could sell it for thousands of dollars a piece.
What?
Yeah, because similar to Jellycat and, like, any toy company, like, they had limited editions, right? So, like, as soon as the company retired that Beanie Baby, it would explode in value, just like supply and demand.
Wow.
And literally, like, divorced couples would fight over their Beanie Baby assets.
Oh my god.
And children were trampled by stampeding collectors, like adults who wanted to go collect these Beanie Babies.
What?
And some families even sank their entire life savings into acquiring the rarest Beanie Babies, hoping to fund retirement and put their kids through college. So, when the Beanie Baby bubble ultimately burst, it like destroyed some people's lives.
Oh, it burst?
Yeah. Now they're worthless.
Wait, why did it burst?
So, okay, like peak of Beanie Babies hysteria basically created this black market for Beanie
This is
Babies.
so ridiculous. I'm
I
sorry.
know. It's crazy. Where like there was theft, fraud, counterfeiting. People went to jail.
People went to jail over Beanie Baby.
Literally, Ohio police reported coming across Beanie Babies during busts of organized crime groups. There was this quote from this police officer who was like, yeah, there was just a sad, like, purple Beanie Baby in the corner. Because they had, as they were getting busted, they like took all their Beanie Babies. Like, that's what they chose to say.
Oh my god. Can you imagine like going through and like contraband, heroin, coke, Beanie Baby?
Yeah, literally, yes. People were like breaking into trucks on the distribution line, like stealing trucks of Beanie Babies. So these are people who went to jail. But yeah, this like excessive greed, it kind of started reflecting upon the company, Thai. So Thai became super aggressive with trying to stop counterfeiting and knockoffs.
Mm.
And they started urging children to report counterfeits, all this stuff. And then in 1999, Thai Inc. blindsided collectors with a surprise announcement, which said that at the end of the year, December 31st, 11:59 p.m., all beanies will be retired.
They weren't making them anymore.
Yes, kind of. So that they said that, and then there was like obviously mass panic amongst the collector market. Like people didn't know, is this going to make my collection more valuable or less valuable? Or like what's going to happen? But then a few months later, allegedly in response to fans, the company changed its mind. So instead of axing the Beanie Babies altogether, it decided to release an entirely new line in the new millennium in 2000, starting with a shimmering star-spangled bear called The Beginning.
Hmm.
So some speculate that this decision was an attempt to make future Beanie Babies more difficult to counterfeit and like devalue the ones that were out there or like stop the counterfeiting. Others just felt like it was like a publicity stunt to generate interest in this brand that was maybe already starting to lose steam. But whatever the reasoning was, like people kind of turned against the company and turned against the brand. And now these Beanie Babies are absolutely worthless.
I don't know that I completely understand this. So they were like, we're not going to be making Beanie Babies anymore. Actually, just
Mhm.
kidding. We are. We're just going to make them more
We're going to make new ones.
complex looking. Like, what was the actual tangible difference between the old and the new Beanie Babies? Like era 1, era 2.
No, I think, yeah, it was just like a different design. But I think they were just like, okay, we're going to make these new ones that are like cooler now.
I'm surprised that it had the effect of bursting the bubble
Hmm.
because you would think that people would go more rabid over the OGs.
Yeah, I agree. Because theoretically, like supply is now constricted. There's not going to make any more of the ones that you have. But I think because the company just like took such a brand hit, people didn't even think it was cool anymore. Like they didn't even think the Beanie Babies were good or cool. So then demand also went down, you know?
Damn, that
Yeah.
sucks. You're like, there goes my retirement account.
Word of caution to American Girl dolls or Jellycat out there.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get too greedy. I mean, like literally crazy that they were asking kids to report trademark infringement.
Yeah, that is insane. Oh my god. The dolls go deep. I had no idea that the dolls would go so deep, but they
Yeah.
really do.
The dolls go deep, yeah. And like collecting goes deep, which I remember as a kid, like even watching QVC or whatever. And I don't know, like the TV people being like, you should collect coins. Like, here's this
Oh my
coin
god,
box that
yes.
like collect all 50 quarters.
I did that.
Yeah, like my parents bought that for themselves. And then we were collecting quarters. And I never, yeah, I'm not a collector, I don't think, but 30 to 40% of Americans collect one thing or another.
That's
That's a huge
unsurprising.
percentage. What do you collect?
I collect perfume. I consider my books a collection too.
Mm. Hmm.
That's why I don't like ebooks. I like having them on my shelf.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the psychology behind collecting is really interesting. I looked into this just like very briefly because I feel like it's kind of obvious, but it was interesting to like hear a psychologist actually like speak to it. But there is actually like science behind this. So like the rarity of a piece can obviously make it valuable, but it can also stimulate certain parts of the brain that register uniqueness. The scientific research relating to this phenomenon is called the oddball experiment. When you scan the brain using an MRI machine, when a participant sees a string of ordinary objects punctuated by an extraordinary object, specific areas of the brain will actually light up. They speculate this is probably why we seek unique things when we collect, like the rare Beanie Baby.
Mhm.
These areas in the brain that it stimulates are connected to our pleasure center. And people just really like the hunt, like they like the anticipation. Quote, the collector's craving allows her to imagine anything she wants about the desired returns the object will bring. We know that this is the phase that the pleasure center burns most brightly. Once the prize is obtained, the pleasure center actually quiets. So actually, like anticipation is better than when we actually get the reward.
I mean, that
And that
makes
is
so
like
much sense.
the nature of collecting. You never have enough. You always need that next thing. You're always in the hunt, right?
I think the moral of the story here is you have to collect something that is actually rare.
Well, I feel like people don't really collect common things because it's too easy. Like I feel like you don't get that thrill of the chase vibe.
Okay, these Jellycats, if they're yeah, $60 is a lot of money, but if
Fair.
you're a
Yeah, yeah.
collector, like how hard is it to get one? You just have to
That's
like
true.
save up for a paycheck.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Spend your whole retirement on Jellycats or whatever.
Oh my god. Crazy. Well, that was a way more interesting episode than I would have ever thought dolls were, so this was a hit.
Yeah, this is a hit. Love these little niche communities.
But you gotta look up reborn dolls. I wanna hear your thoughts about them.
Yeah, just go to our Instagram. I'll post a bunch of reborn doll photos.
Perfect. Oh, I wanna know what everybody's American Girl doll is, like who you
Oh.
are. We should post some memes.
I'm definitely going to repost the memes from these accounts. They were really good.
Incredible.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. If you enjoy the pod, we would love for you to give us a follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us get the word out and reach new listeners. Our sources are available on Patreon, where if you choose to become a patron, you'll also get access to bonus content, our monthly book club, and our eternal gratitude.
If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a topic for a future episode, email us at everythingiknowabouttpod@gmail.com or DM us across all socials at EikaPod, that's EIKA pod. Thanks for listening and see you next week.